right, green light means we are live. So back for another episode of the Fight Science podcast. So today, very different episode. It's an episode that for a long time I have almost sworn that I wouldn't do. I've always said that I would never get my athletes onto the Fight Science podcast. And the reason that I said I would never get my athletes on the Fight Science podcast, one, is because they look like Brad and I don't want to put you guys through that. But two, more importantly, I've always thought that it's a bit cringe almost to get your athletes on and talk about the work that you do with them. And I've always thought that it's almost cheesy advertisement. But I guess what we're doing today is not that at all. What I want to do is get you guys to get to know Brad Quake Riddell a little bit more. So before we get into it, everyone, Brad Quake Riddell, first athlete on the Fight Science podcast.
You're lucky we're not talking about your profession because you'd have no business if I told them how you do my weight cuts.
Yeah, this is the other thing. Like, I've always thought about, because people always message me and they're like, "Hey man, like, why don't you get Brad on? Why don't you get Kai? Hit up Israel, get him on." It's like, I feel like with what the podcast is, it's like a super nerdy science podcast. You wear like such a different hat when you're talking to like these academics. And I've always thought, and it probably will be interesting for the listeners now to kind of see what it's like when you wear the other hat, when you put like your practitioner hat on and you're talking to you guys, because yeah, you do have to be.
Clearly, I am an academic.
Clearly. Wait, Quake, before we get started, someone actually hit me up with this the other day and I never actually thought about it. Quake, how did you get the name Quake? How did that come about?
I took it from Christchurch. So my city had a lot of earthquakes and stuff like that, and I was up here like battling with all the North Islanders. I moved up here because of the earthquakes, and I was sort of like the new kid on the block and this guy from the South Island, and I was fighting with the local people and beating them. And so I just took that name Quake sort of as like, because I just rep that city, still do. And I was pretty proud that I could, beat a lot of people coming from that smaller town and smaller gyms and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how I adopted that.
And for the guys that are listening that don't know, like when you're talking about that city, it's Christchurch, and what you're talking about is the earthquake that went through.
Yeah, the 03, bruv. Christchurch had a lot of earthquakes, terrorist attack. It's had a hard time, but it's on the up.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a bit later. But obviously, let's talk about real quick your last fight. What that was last weekend. Just got back from Fight Island. Last fight, big congrats. That was 3 from 3. That dude, I don't know, from where I was sitting, he was a bit of a monster. Hey, I didn't even realize until we were watching the fight in Israel's room what that guy's record was. What was it, like 24-2 or something?
Yeah, it was massive. I didn't actually know it either until I got in the cage. Well, I knew he had more because all week at the interviews they kept saying like, "Oh, he's so much more experienced," and I was like, "Oh yeah." I assumed he had more fights than me because everybody does in MMA. And when I actually took the fight, I didn't even bother looking at like his record or anything. I just Eugene was like, "Yeah, we can fight this guy." I was like, "Cool." And then I watched him fight, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll fight that guy. Like, I don't really mind anyway." And I didn't actually know his record, bro, until I jumped in the cage, and they were like 21 wins with 20 finishes. I was like, "Ooh, not bad." And then the fight started.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously, like we're always going to be biased, like towards you guys. Like we work so closely with you for so long, but I feel like out of everyone I've worked with, not that there's easy fights when you get to the UFC, but I do kind of feel that you're on an uphill battle. It's almost like, what do you think? Are you getting that impression or what?
100% stitching me up. They just give me whoever they feel is going to be like the hardest, most difficult fight, because they're probably just like, yeah, he's stubborn as he's too proud not to fight this guy, or he's definitely going to have a crack at him. So they just stitching me up with all these hard dudes, but that's all good. It's like snakes and ladders, man. It's like it's like the biggest ladder to the top. So I'm like, I'll fight that guy, because then I just get to skip a bunch of people and get like where I want to be faster. Hopefully. They just find like the next guy that's ranked just above him is like the same beast. I'm like, oh, great. Move up one ranking.
Yeah, let's get into all that. But I think first let's kind of wind it back. What I do want to do, I do want to talk about fight. I want to talk about like your prep, what you get for. I want to talk about those three guys you fight because they've all been like messed up blood burner fights. But let's go right back. Let's go when you started because your background is in rugby. Am I right? Like your
Yeah.
athletic background started and then you started in Muay Thai, and then you found yourself to Tiger Muay Thai and all that. Talk us through that. How did this all start, and how did you get started in combat sports?
Well, my sports background started in athletics
Mm.
originally when I was 5, which was crazy young. They had like just like 5-year-old competitions. You know, you just do like you go there in the morning and do like one event. Sorry, all morning you do like 4 or 5 events, right? You just do everything. So
Yeah,
I did that until I was like 18. I just did like a little bit of everything, and I played rugby the whole time too. So I guess that's where like athleticism came from. And I started Muay Thai when I was 14 or 15, something like that, just for fun. And I was good. I was at the start, I wasn't actually that good, to be honest. I was just real aggressive, and like I could hit hard. I was like explosive, aggressive, I could hit hard, but I was obsessed with it. So like I was always watching films, always like watching the world's best fighters taking whatever they did the best, and then I'd just go to the gym and replicate it. So I didn't have like any strategy to get better. Like I wasn't like a movement or anything like that. I'd just be like, that guy's got a mean hook. So I just copied that hook. And then I was like, boy, Carl's got mean kicks. So I just replicated those kicks. Because I used to be a kicker, like, which probably no one will believe, but I used to kick all the time and elbow a lot and clinch and stuff from my time in Thailand. And then like my boxing became real dominant when I moved to Auckland. Um, so that's how I started off, man. Yeah, I wasn't very like educated on ring craft or faking and timing and all that sort of stuff. I was just obsessive over like little technical details, like how to hook properly, how to kick properly, how to knee. And yeah, man. And then I came to Auckland, and the first gym I was at was Liga. I'm still there. And it was like a pure Muay Thai gym. It was all these beasts that were in like the K1 Max and world champions, and like they had like Thai titles and stuff. And I trained with those. I walked into this gym. It was actually an apartment. This old man called Philip Lam, we call him Sifu, and the gym was his lounge. So he lived in the gym in this little apartment, actually just down the road from where I'm staying now in quarantine, called in Anzac Ave. And you got up all these flights of stairs, bro. The first level was like a flight center, or like a flight ticket by a guy, what do they call, travel agent. And then the next level was like a gay porn magazine shop or something like that. It was something like that when I was out of it.
That's where you find the boys or your dog. What a gym choice.
And then a few more levels, bro, was this like apartment that the lounge had been converted into a gym. It wasn't that big. And there was bags, a small ring, a bit of mat space, and it was stinky ass, bro, and it was mean. And his kitchen was like, his bathroom and his kitchen was like we all used as well. And then he had like his little bedroom. And yeah, man, that's where I spent the first like 3 or 4 years, 3 years or something, training in there with them. Just animals, bro. There was like 10 or 12 of us, maybe. There wasn't too many of us, but every one of them was a freak.
How old were you when that was happening? Is it? And this is when you moved up from Christchurch to Auckland. You went
Yes,
to Liga. How old were you when all that happened?
19. 19. So when I was 18, I finished school because I broke my leg playing rugby first year out of school, and I missed like a title fight, and I was more bummed about missing the title fight than the rugby. And so as soon as I got out of the cast, I just like skipped rehab and went to Thailand, and it was pretty hard because I literally snapped my leg in half, so it was like all bolted back together. And so when I got to Thailand, they were like real Thai about my recovery. They were like, "Oh, just run and make it stronger." So I used to just run miles, man, on this bung ass leg. I couldn't even go up on my toe. My calf muscle like didn't exist. And I spent like 2 months there, and then I came home and I was like, I got to get back there. And then the earthquake happened, and then I got sent to Auckland for work, and that's how I ended up in Auckland when I was 19, training here.
Yeah, right. So you'd already gone Thailand. Were you at Tiger? Did you go to Tiger there? Was that your first
Yeah.
exposure?
Yeah. That was my first time at Tiger. I went with one of my mates from Christchurch who'd already been there, and he got real bad staph. Typical. It's been around that long over there, and he came home to get rid of it, to like recover a bit, and then he was going back to finish off his last like 2 months. I was like, yeah, I'll come. So I went with him.
Yeah. So let's go. You've gone out to Thailand where you stuffed your leg. You went and did your professional rehab in Thailand. Came back, went up to Auckland. You're in Liga fighting above the gay porn shop or whatever.
Yeah.
And then what's the go then when you go in to what we're like 19, 20 at this stage? Is that right?
I was 19 still. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I trained in that gym like a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And one of the coaches there was like, "Oh, do you want to fight in a tournament?" And I was like, because my first 4 months or something up here, I lived in the hotel that I worked at with my mate right in the middle of the city, and we were like 19, man, and just partying. I barely trained. I didn't train. And then I went to this gym and I started training again because my mate was like, "Oh man, you need to get back into it." And I was like, "Yeah." And then I was like, I'd been there a little bit and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm fit enough." He's like, "Yeah, no, you're fit enough to do this tournament." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I did this tournament. That was some really experienced guys, and I think I knocked both of them out. And then they were like, "Oh, mean." And then I fought again a couple of weeks later, and they just kept backing me up fights. And then I fought in a tournament just after that, another 8-man. And then I fought in a Chinese team at the end of the year. So I think in like 6 months, man, I had like 8 fights or something. Jeez. And it just started piling on and skyrocketing from there. And I think within that 1 year period, so it was like July to July, I had like 14 fights, which isn't that many considering the person I'm rooming with at the moment. He had like 23 in a year. But 14 in a year was, for a normal person, is quite a lot. Not for a style bender.
Yeah. So then that was 19. So say 19 to 20, you're sitting there. What happens next? Because eventually you do find yourself back to Tiger, hey, for quite a while.
Yeah. So I was fighting all the time, and then I got offered this gig in China that our mate Blood Diamond was already over there living and fighting, and it sounded all right. So I was like, cool. So I quit my job and went to China, and it was not what I expected, bro. It was not fun for me. It wasn't my gig, eh? It was Blood's gig, just chill out and train and during the day. But it was like out in a fish farm, bro, like way out in the countryside, these stinky ass fish farms. I hated it. And from there, I remember ringing Woody one day, and I was like, I had a fight, and then I rang Woody afterwards on Skype, and I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to leave, man. And he was like, yeah, I've got a spare room in Phuket. I was like, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And so I pretty much packed all my shit back at the gym, and then I called a cab to the train station. I didn't have much money at the time, like none. I hadn't even been paid. I didn't get paid for that fight, I don't think, because I left. And the train, we were up mainland middle of China, and the train went all the way down to Guangzhou, bro. It was like 19, I'm going to have to Google it. It was like 19 hours on a train. So I bought this ticket. My Chinese mate helped me buy a ticket. Bought a ticket. Get into the train, bro. It's a wooden seat. It's a wooden bench. 2 benches facing each other with a little table and 4 random people, bro. So I slept on a wooden bench for 19 hours just sitting there. But I had nothing. I had no phone, like no credit. I had a phone, but like no credit or anything, or a SIM card. Like no books. It was sucked as, man. I left one of my bags back at the gym that had my laptop. And every time you got up to go to the toilet, which was a hole in the ground, bro, on the train, see the train tracks going past, like a kid could easily fall through it. Every time you go to the toilet and go back to your seat, someone had taken it because there was standing seats too, standing tickets. So people stood up, bro, for hours stood up. And they'd take your seat, bro, and you'd come back and there's no English because it's mainland China. And I'd be like, get out of my seat, like yelling at old people and stuff, like, get out of my seat. And I didn't even know that there was like a bed option. But I'm kind of glad I didn't get the bed option because someone probably would have taken my bed when I went to the toilet. But I got to Guangzhou, bro, and I got off this train. I don't know where I was, like, and then some lady helped me and like showed me where to catch the bus to the airport. And it was like, my flight was still like 12 hours away. And I was like, no, I'm just going to the airport now. So I just went to the airport, bro, and just hung around in this Guangzhou airport's a shithole. This massive hangar shed for like 10 hours, bro. I just did laps, walk around with my trolley, like, get me out of here, get me out of here. And then I turned up to Thailand, bro, with zero money because when I went to check in, they were like, you need an exiting flight. And I was like, what? They're like, you need an exiting flight from Thailand. You can't just go on one way. I was like, oh, shit. So I had to buy a ticket back to China, which took like a lot of my money. And I finally ended up on Woody's doorstep, bro. And he gave me a room, gave me a scooter, gave me a gym to train at. He like hooked me up with these guys at Lion Muay Thai. Still wasn't at Tiger yet. And I went down there, bro, and they were like, yeah, you fight and we sponsor you and we take half your money. I was like, done. So I just did that, bro. And then I eventually ended up at Tiger. Tiger wouldn't sponsor me at first, bro. Tiger wouldn't sponsor me to train anything. They were like, nah, you're not good enough, pretty much. This was before the owners that are now, the previous owners. They were like, nah.
How many fights did you have? When you got to Woody's place and you went to that gym, what were you looking at, like experience-wise?
30, 40, maybe. Yeah. Somewhere around that.
Decent record?
Yeah, it only lost like 3 or 4.
Right.
Max. It was the same year I fought John Wayne Parr the first time, so that's probably how I could find my record.
Right.
Yeah, bro, and they wouldn't sponsor me. And then I took that fight with Wayne on like whatever it was, like 48 hours notice. And then they were like, and then we had some problems with the gym owner at Lion. He ended up in jail or something. And then Tiger was like, yeah, we'll sponsor you. That was cool. And yeah, that's how I ended up at Tiger, bro.
So after the Wayne Parr fight, that's when Tiger jumped up and down. Yeah. They're like, oh, come over here.
Yeah.
Was Woody coaching at Tiger at that time or no?
Nah, he was at what was it called, bro? It was down the bottom of the island in Rawai, Phuket Fit. And he owned a company called Training for Warriors. He had a franchise of Training for Warriors with another guy called Mark. And they were like doing their own thing down there, bro. So I spent a lot of time in Rawai at my first time in Thailand. I lived down there, chilled down there. It was pretty cool, man. It was a nice area. I had some mean training partners at this little gym. It was just a few foreigners, mostly Thais. And yeah, bro, it was a cool time. I was just young, kicking in Thailand. I was mad.
And that's like, how old are you now? Like 21? Are you like 21 by the time you're here or something?
Yep. Yeah, I would have been like 21. Exactly, yeah, about 21-ish.
21, but you spent like a fair chunk of time over there, eh? Because you ended up working your way up. Like you're the head Muay Thai coach. So, like, how did that all happen? What was the time frame and like what goes into coming from like walking in and then coming up all the way up there?
Yeah. So what did I do? I just trained and fought, bro, as much as I could. And then I'd run out of money all the time, right? Because I wasn't working, right? So I'd run out of money and I'd fly home and I'd work. I'd put up jib board, put up drywall all day for like, I'd just smash work, bro, for like 4 weeks. Wouldn't train. I'd just put up jib relentlessly, get all the money, oof, go back. Did that for like a year and maybe more. And then the old coach got the sack. And Roger Huerta put my name forward. He was like, oh, you should have the job. Like, you can teach. And I was like, oh, man, I can't teach. Like, I'd never taught before. I'd held some pads. I'd never really taught. And I took the job, bro. And was just learning how to teach on the fly, like teaching people that were like way more experienced at like MMA and stuff than me. But I was teaching heaps of MMA fighters. I was teaching kickboxing, like Dutch style, because that's like all I knew. And I was just watching like heaps of film, heaps of like online courses. Like I remember even watching Duke Rufus's at the time, but not a super huge fan of it now. But back then, bro, it was like all I had. You know, I didn't know how to teach. So I was watching all these older guys copying them how to teach. Trying to teach myself, man. And then I spent a bit of time with Eugene and learned heaps from him, bro, just on the pads and watching. Most of the stuff I learned from him was at that time was just watching him train Izzy and other people. And I used to fly home and visit Christchurch, and I'd always come up to Auckland for a couple of days and spend like 2 days at the gym, and he'd teach me drills. And I'd take it back to Thailand and drill it and then teach it. So that's how I taught myself to teach, and then Eugene taught me to teach. It was just copycatting. And I remember going out all night up here at King of the Ring on a Friday, like partied hard. And then I saw him before I went out to town. I was like, oh, what time tomorrow? It was like 6 a.m. I was like, shit. I knew he was just trying to test me, eh? And so like I was out all night, man. Then I got like 2 hours sleep, turned up at the gym like in an Uber with all my bags to like learn how to like teach more skills and get better drills and stuff like that to teach people back at Tiger, bro. And then I'd shoot back over there. And then man, that's how I developed into the coach I am, I guess.
And is that so? Obviously, Eugene had city kickboxing; they were pretty established. Were you going back to Auckland and training at Liga, or were you going back and were you training at City at this stage, or had you just met
Both.
Eugene from when he came over to train at Tiger with Israel and Dan and that?
No, I knew Eugene from before that, from fighting on shows with his guys and fighting on shows with him. And I used to go train with him in the mornings when I was way younger, do like conditioning and stuff. I used to do conditioning circuits with him and Izzy and stuff. And but I was still training at Liga as well. Yeah, I was still predominantly training at Liga and a little bit at City Kickboxing. And then when I went to MMA, that's when I like transitioned into that's when I transitioned to City Kickboxing full time, because Liga is still Muay Thai and K1.
So you were in Tiger. How many years were you in Tiger? Like, were you head coach at doing the Muay Thai program there?
I think I was only like teaching the striking there for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years I taught. I spent like all up 5 years there. Maybe if you add up the times that I was going there and back, it'd be like 6, something like that. Yeah, man, it was a while. I spent most of my adolescence there.
It was like, so from about 21 to 26, 27, you were kind of floating between little stints back home in New Zealand, but mostly at Thailand?
Yeah. Majority of the time from like 23 to like 26, I was just in Thailand pretty much. I didn't really come home.
Yeah. So, and in that time, that's when you obviously knew Eugene, you obviously knew Israel and all those guys from around the same blocks. Were they coming over as well to Tiger and doing any camps over there, or not so much? Or?
Nah, they didn't do camps, bro. They came over one time before Israel fought. I think he fought Glory. One time he came before a China fight. Me and him both had a fight in China. He came before that. And then he came before he fought Philippe Verlinden another time. And they only came for like 2 weeks, bro, something like that. I think it was about being like a striker versus wrestler. Is like, if you can't get up, man, you're just done for the entire fight. Which I learned, like, sometimes I'd just come out to spar these guys and I'd throw a kick and they'd catch it and take me down. Then I was just stuck for an entire round because I just didn't know anything. Yeah.
Were you doing MMA in Tiger, or was when you went back to Auckland, that's when you're like, okay, I'm going to go balls to the wall with MMA?
I did a lot at Tiger. Did a lot of grappling. I did a lot of wrestling with George and Roger at the start, and Mirbek, who's another 70-kilo 155er in the UFC. He actually taught me a lot of wrestling. I used to hold his pads for his UFC fights, and he'd teach me how to wrestle. Him and his Chechnyan mates taught me heaps of wrestling as well, and the Hickman brothers taught me crazy amounts. So yeah, I wasn't very good at jits. I had another mate there, Alex Shield. He's the jiu-jitsu coach, and Emilo and Tariq, and they taught me bits of grappling. But I spent a lot of time like diving into the wrestling because I sort of like took to that like a duck to water. You know, I was like very suited to my style and my work ethic. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So then let's fast forward, like start the MMA career. So you went back and was your first fight out of CKB for your MMA career?
Nah, no. My first MMA fight was out of that gym, Ryan Muay Thai in Rahway.
Right.
Yeah, they told me I was fighting in Burma. Just kickbox Muay Thai with MMA gloves. And I was like, oh yeah, man. And the guy just lied to us. And then when we got up there, it was like a cage. And I was like, oh, buzzy. And then we like fought at like lunchtime, and it was just MMA. When we got there, they're like, so MMA fighters like come over here for the meeting, and then like everyone went over, and I was like stood there like, huh? And then I just realized that we were fighting MMA, and I was like, oh shit. So I fought this like Malaysian guy who had a couple of MMA fights, but I actually ended up on the ground, bro. We actually ended up on the ground and had him in like north-south, and I think I was going for an armbar or something, and I like fell off. And then we stood up, and I managed to catch him, bro. He was like drifting around the edge of the cage towards my right hand, and I just timed the right hand, bro, and put him out for quite a while. And
let's fast forward. Let's go. Boom. You've gone back to Auckland.
Yeah.
Were you always going to go back to the city? Were you always going to go back to CKB and go with Eugene, or like what? How did that all come to be?
I went home for Christmas, so I had a couple of MMA fights out of Tiger still.